Hi everyone, my name is Cynthia. Let's talk books. And today I'd like to talk to you about all the books I read in June, which were a lot. So in the interest of keeping this video shorter than I would otherwise, I'm going to try to be succinct in my reviews, and also because I did vlog a couple of the readathons. The books that I discussed in those vlogs I will not be discussing at great length in here, but I will link the blogs in which I discuss them down below. So let's get right to it, because I read, I think it was 17 books total in June, which is more than normal for me. I normally am reading like 7-8 books a month, but I'm not working this month. I didn't work in June, so I had a lot more time. So let's get started with We Set the Dark on Fire by Tehlor Mejia. This is a fantastic book. I'm giving it 5 out of 5 stars. It is a favorite of the year. It is a kind of dystopian book in which, but in this world, it's kind of set in an island, and people are divided into 2 groups of people, kind of the elites that live in the city, and then the cursed people that have been cursed by the gods that live kind of down by the beach, it sounded like. The city is walled, and so the influx of people is tightly regulated, and movement of people is tightly regulated by the police force. As a result, then some of the themes that get layered down here are about immigration, about refugees. On top of that, the way that the society runs, elite men get 2 wives, a primera and a segunda. The primera is kind of the rational, strategic wife that is more of an equal partner with the husband, and then the segunda is the emotional, childbearing wife. And the story follows Daniela, who is a primera at a school where they trained primeras and segundas for elite men in the society. And it turns out that Daniela comes from the people outside of the wall, and she has forged papers that have allowed her to attend this school, and she's really kind of doing this for herself to have a better life, but also for her family, because once she is chosen to marry into a family, her family will be helped out financially. It's a beautiful story, and I hate not being able to talk more about it here because I have to move on to some of the other books that I've read. But the next book that I read in June was American Dreamer by Adriana Herrera. And this is such a really stinking cute male-male romance in which one of the main characters runs a Caribbean food truck and the other works at a library. They're both incredibly passionate about their work and what they do for a living, and it's just stinking cute. Like, if you are looking for a good interracial romance, this is it. It's really cute. One of the main characters is also Dominican, and that plays kind of those discussions of race and are definitely present in the book, which I really, really enjoy when those elements are put in. Because I feel like it's much more realistic in that way. But this American Dreamer I'm giving 4 out of 5 stars, and you can probably see Lady is making an appearance here. She has a comb, so if she wants to be on my lap, I'm letting her be on my lap because poor thing has to wear a comb. The next book that I read was a buddy read with Cousin over at Always Doing, and we read An Unconditional Freedom by Alyssa. This is such a fantastic book. I'm giving it 4 out of 5 stars. I think my reading of it was actually heavily enhanced by Buddy reading it, because Alyssa Cole is a writer I very much like. Her contemporaries are pretty good, but where I think the magic really happens in her writing is in her historicals, especially the Civil War series. In the Civil War series, she really centers her stories around discussions of slavery, of race in the U.S. And in this particular story, our main hero, what's his name, Daniel, is a sharp, intelligent critic of American history and American society. And so as a result, what a Cole is really giving us is not just a discussion of kind of the American slave history and kind of that dark past, but also a commentary on today's politics. And it's really, really brilliantly done. I enjoyed the development of the characters. I felt like I got to know them. There were a couple times in which I thought Alyssa Cole might just give us a cliche, and then she of course did not, because she's really quite brilliant. And I think for me, the history and the commentary on today that is present in here really just put it over the top. If you want a much more critical review of it, you should go check out Cassie's video, the video where she discusses this book, because I thought she had a little more criticism of it, and I think her criticism is good and sharp. And for me as a historian reading this and seeing how brilliantly the history is handled, just kind of overshadowed any kind of weaker elements within the story. But Cassie is really great at talking about those things, so go check out her video. The next book that I read in June was The Best Man by Richard Peck. I do believe I have this one in a blog. So what I'll say is that it's a middle grade in which you follow a young kid as he deals with the loss of a family member, and also with his uncle marrying his kind of teaching assistant. It is dealing with queer themes, but it's not like the whole story is not about that. It's really about following this kid and how he's experiencing the world around him, and it just so happens that his uncle's gay. So there are some discussions of that, and I thought they were handled really well, and I really enjoyed it. So I'm giving this one 4 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read was The Prince and the Dressmaker by Wang. This is a graphic novel that follows a prince who wants to wear dresses. So he hires a dressmaker to make him these brilliant dresses. The art in here was well done. It was very cute. I thought the story was very solid and well done. I'm giving it 3 out of 5 stars. Very solid book. The next one I'm also giving 3 out of 5 stars. It is The Sublime and Spirited Voyage of Original Sin. This is a female-female romance in which they are pirates. It's on a pirate ship. So if you're interested in a romance novel with pirates, this is it. There is plenty of pirating going on in this book. I enjoyed the romance and the characters, but what didn't work so much for me was the language. I felt like the author was trying to kind of capture the way people talked in this era, and I tend to not like that in my romance novels. I prefer it when contemporary language is used, even if it's a historical book. Does that make me a terrible historian? Maybe. Anyway, if you're looking for pirates, I do recommend this book, but overall there were limits as to how well the story worked for me personally. So the next book is Timekeeper by Tara Sim. This is a steampunk book set in a world in London, but where clocks control time, clock towers control time. And we're following this kid who works at the clock towers, whose dad has been trapped in a town where something went wrong with a clock tower. They don't know exactly what, but nobody can go in or out of this town. And on top of that, our main character has had an accident at one of the clock towers, and so he is dealing with trauma and really PTSD. And at the same time, he's struggling with kind of going back to work and with getting his career back on track, at the same time that he's mourning having lost his father. Even though his father's not dead, he has no access to his father, and there is very little hope that he ever would. Overall, I felt like this story, I really wanted to love this story. It has queer themes, and the main character is gay, and he has a male love interest, but the love interest is, the romance was very cute, but who and what the romance interest is, it didn't quite work for me. yeah, I can't say much more than that without spoiling things. So that made overall the whole story not fully work for me. I'm giving this 2 out of 5 stars because it read too much like a first book in the series. Like there were interesting elements in this world that are being set up, but that weren't fully explored, and there wasn't enough here for me to want to pick up the next book. But I can see how other people would like it, and I think if the themes interest you, that you should pick it up and see for yourself. The next book that I read was a romance novel, Stripped by Zoe Castile. So I talked about this more in depth in the vlog, so I'll just say that I am giving this 4 out of 5 stars, mostly because it was just kind of the right book in the right moment, but it definitely has its flaws. It's and mainly for me, it was about the mental health issues that were clearly present, but that weren't addressed in any kind of meaningful way. So that kind of took me out of the story. But otherwise, I thought the romance was hot, and I was actually not bothered by the fact that the main character was a stripper because of how well Zoe Castile handled that part of it. So overall, this was a win for me, and I will continue reading the series. Next book I read in June was Sweet Française by Irène Némirovsky. I have a full video dedicated to this book, so I won't go into detail other than I'm giving it 4 out of 5 stars. It's books set in World War II France, and it was written, the author Irène Némirovsky never got to finish the book. She was planning a kind of bigger project because she died in a Nazi death camp. And the history that comes out in this story is brilliantly done. If you want to learn more about it, you can go check out my dedicated review of this one. Next up is 99% Mine by Sally Thorne. I really struggled with what my feelings towards this book. Ultimately, I'm settling on giving it 2 out of 5 stars because even though I really enjoy Sally Thorne's writing, I think she does the buildup of like sexual tension really well. There was a huge element in here that just did not work for me, and that was, it wasn't even the central romance. It's that both the main character Darcy and the love interest have a toxic relationship with Darcy's brother. It's clearly toxic, and I felt abusive. And at the end, we were asked to just kind of give that brother the benefit of the doubt, and I didn't feel that the character had earned it. I didn't think he'd earned a redemption, and we were basically asked to give him that at the end, and I was just not having it. I do like Sally Thorne's writing, like I said, and I will pick up whatever her next book is. The next book I read in June was Rebel Soul by Axie. This is another YA novel set with kind of dystopian themes. This is set in Seoul, South Korea, and it the geopolitical elements in this story really intrigued me. It's set in a world in which nationalism has lost out instead to larger political units. Basically the equivalent of like the EU type idea, where like national identities are not as important as kind of the well-being of the region. And ultimately nationalist powers have lost out. But that doesn't mean that nationalism has ended, and in fact the rebels are the nationalists who are trying to bring back a world that gives people more political rights, I think is what's being argued. So super interesting. The jacket tries to sell this book as Pacific Rim meets kind of Korean dramas. The Korean drama element is definitely there because central to the story is a romance between our main character, who is like about to graduate from high school, and he's incredibly brilliant at running the large robots that through which warfare is conducted. So that's the Pacific Rim element. But the romance is central here. I enjoyed this book because it is really high paced. There's a lot of plot. There are very few moments in which there's not something happening. And I really enjoyed that as a plot driven reader. So it's 4 out of 5 stars for a very interesting world and a high paced story that kept me really interested. Once I got into it, I needed to finish the story. So I really enjoyed that one. The next book I read was All Systems Red by Martha Wells. So this is the introduction of Murderbot. You've probably heard other people talk about Murderbot. This is a short novella. So the long and short of it is that Murderbot is a robot that has become self-aware. It is tasked with protecting a group of human researchers on another planet, and trouble comes in, and you'll have to read the rest of the story for it. It's really stinking awesome. I really loved Murderbot. So I very much related to Murderbot. Love the story. This is definitely kind of a yearly favorite. One of the kind of best things I've read so far this year. Loved Murderbot. Along those same lines, another sci-fi novella that I read the first in the Binti trilogy. This is a bind up of all of the novellas, but I did read the first one, and this one really worked for me in a very different way than All Systems Red worked for me. Like, All Systems Red worked for me at an emotional level, and that I really connected with Murderbot. Binti worked for me at an intellectual level. I really connected with Binti because I feel like I have gone through a lot of the themes explored in Binti. So we're following Binti, who is the first of her people from Earth who is leaving the community. She's leaving to go to a prestigious university off planet where her math skills will be further developed, because she's a brilliant at math and at balancing the forces of the world. So in that first novella, we're just following her from, when she makes the decision to leave, and then when she arrives at the university, and there's so much happening. There's intrigue, danger, and at the same time, I connected to it as a first-generation student, as the first in my family to go off to college. And the themes there, I thought, were brilliantly done about what it means to leave your family, your community, and go to a world that's quite foreign to you and to your family, and to navigate, how much of your culture you are gonna keep, how much you're gonna be asked to leave behind, and dealing with kind of new people and new experiences as an outsider. At the same time, like, wanting to explore this new world in which you are meeting people who are just as good at the things that you love and enjoy, and that you can relate to at an intellectual level, but not necessarily at a cultural level. So 5 out of 5 stars for me, another favorite of the year, and I'm really looking forward to continuing to read the series. Next up is Jane Steele by Lyndsay Faye. Jane Steele, I'm giving 2 out of 5 stars. It's a Jane Eyre retelling, and it does follow kind of the general plot structure of Jane Eyre, but this book is really more about murder. It's about murder, and then the second half is all basically a love story. There are parts of the story that really worked for me, like I enjoyed the murder. Go murder? No, but that part was really interesting, the way that's handled. It's got a lot of feminist themes in here that I enjoyed. I enjoyed the love story too, because this is where the author brings in the British Empire. That our main character is British, but he's been raised in India, and he brings with him kind of his attachment and love of Indian culture, and also like Indian individuals. I enjoyed that because a lot of time in these classics, they're set in a time period in which the British Empire has expanded, but you don't see much of the empire in a lot of these classics, and so this is kind of correcting that. Overall, the book did not work for me, though, in large part because although there are really interesting elements in the story, for me personally, there were large chunks that were incredibly boring, where I was forcing myself to get through those parts. And so then therefore the book didn't work as a whole for me, but I can see why other people love it. And in fact, if you're thinking about reading this book, I would advise you to go look at a bunch of different people's reviews. I do think it's a book you don't want to go into it fully blind. You want to know a little bit of what you're getting into it, you know, without spoilers or anything like that. If you are not into, like, there's violence in this book, but it's not that explicit. What I think is more explicit is the way the author describes blood, large quantities of blood. So if that's something you know you can't handle, then I would definitely stay away from it. But otherwise, I would definitely say go check out other people's reviews of it. Next up is a book that I really, really love, and that is Summer of Salt by Katrina Leno. I'm giving these 5 out of 5 stars. It's set in an island, in a place in which this family, the women in this family receive magical powers. At different times in their life, they might receive their kind of magical ability, definitely by the time they're 18. Now, there is a chance that they won't get any kind of magical ability by their 18th birthday, but that is more rare. And so we're following a set of twins, one of who received her magical abilities when she was born, and the other who is waiting for her magical ability to manifest. And this is just a couple of months before she turns 18. It is also the last summer before they are both going to go off to college and leave this island, which is not something that is always done. And something really tragic happens. And it's really beautifully handled, I thought. Like, the aftermath of this incredibly tragic, horrible moment is handled the way it should be in our world, and is not. And I will put some trigger warnings down in the description box. I don't know that if you've experienced this kind of horrible thing, that it is necessarily something you want to read about in here. It does happen the horrible thing happens off the page. I did find it just, the way it's handled beautifully. I cried at the end of this story, and it just really touched me, so that's why I'm giving it 5 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read in June, it was The Proposal by Jasmine Guillory. And this is such a cute book. I love really stinking cute romance novels, and that is exactly what this was. It begins with a proposal. Nicole is proposed to at a Dodger game by her boyfriend, who she thinks she's just in a casual relationship with. She rejects him in front of everybody, and she's about to be overwhelmed by the response to this rejection when in comes Carlos, who kind of saves the day in the moment. And it turns out they have a lot of great chemistry. So Nicole is Black and Carlos is Latino, and I really loved the discussions of race in this book. I think Jasmine Guillory really handles that excellently. There are large chunks of in which especially Carlos's Latinidad is discussed, and the way that was done was really, really brilliant. And as a Latino, I really identified with a lot of those elements. But I also thought that as a second novel, this was really excellent. I read just Jasmine Guillory's first book, The Wedding Date. And while I really enjoyed that story, I felt like there were pacing issues in it that did not exist here. Like, I was interested in this story every step of the way, and I really enjoyed it. So it is getting 4 out of 5 stars from me, and I'm really looking forward to her third book, which I believe is coming out in July. We're almost done. Second to last book I read was Bonjour, Tristesse by Françoise Sagan. I am planning on doing a full dedicated video to this as part of my Reading the French Classics series. So for now, I'll just say that it is a short book, and it, I think, captures something really interesting about youth in 1950s France. And it's not necessarily something great about it. The main character is not likable. We're following a 17-year-old girl who's very self-centered very full of herself. When this came out, it came out in the 50s. It really was extremely popular, and in large part because Françoise Sagan was 17 when she wrote this story. And she went on to have a great literary career, but this book in particular, I think, captures a historical moment really well. So if you're interested in hearing more about this, keep an eye out for my full dedicated review of it. The last book that I read in June was With the Fire on High by Alyssa. I love the Poet-X, and I'm not someone who typically enjoys reading verse. This one's not in verse. This is a more traditional YA novel in which you're following Imoni, the main character, who is a 17-year-old girl in her senior year of college, trying to figure out what is going to happen with her life. And it's especially challenging for her because she is a mother. She has a little girl that she is raising basically on her own. She does have shared custody with the father, but he isn't present that much. And so how she manages the responsibility of taking care of her daughter while doing homework and trying to figure out if she's going to go to college, or if she what's going to happen with her life. She really wants to be a chef, and so food plays a very central role in this story, and it's just beautiful. I really enjoyed it. This is much more of a character-driven book, so it's rare for me to really enjoy character-driven stories, but this one handled things so beautifully that I really was fully interested in Imoni and her story throughout the whole book. There's a bit of romance in here, and even that I thought was handled really well. And that Imoni, she's dealing with a lot, but she knows who she is and what she wants to, and what her hopes and dreams are. She's just struggling with how to balance it all, but she is she's very sure of herself, and I really loved reading that in a YA character. So I love the story, and I would highly recommend it. In fact, I'm going to recommend it and probably pass this book on to a friend of mine because I think it's really wonderful. It is an Afro-Latinx story and own voices, and so again, highly recommend it. And that is it for me. That is all the books that I read in June. If you have read any of these, let me know. If you disagree with any of my thoughts on all of these, that's fine too. I think that's the beauty of kind of reading and sharing our thoughts on here. But thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.